We are back yet for another afternoon of action-packed sessions, informative, insightful, lots to learn. So at this point in time, I'll be welcoming Diana Piloya, our moderator, to take over for the panel session. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Stephen. Welcome everyone from that short lunch break. So I think I will, the speakers for the panel session can come on. We have Derek Okwii, then Eric Kasakya, and Susan Nakimuli. It's just okay. Thank you very much for joining. Welcome everyone to the flagship panel of the Kampala DevOps and Cloud Summit, building the future of resilient, scalable, and cost-effective cloud systems in East Africa. Today, we are joined by three exceptional engineers to unpack how engineering teams are bridging software development with cloud operations, navigating regulatory demands, leveraging AI, and business value. Let's welcome our panelists and have them introduce themselves. I'll start with Susan.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Yeah, so my name is Mary Susan Nakimuli. I'm currently a DevOps engineer at Emata. I work closely with Steve. He's actually my colleague directly. At Emata, I'll just rephrase. I know we've had a couple of speakers that were from Emata, but at Emata, we basically a fintech that deal in farmer financing. Basically, we offer digital loans to farmers across the Ugandan regions, and we use data to underwrite what the traditional banks can't, like where they can't touch. And on the operation side, I work, like I said, I work with Steve, and we basically ensure that the pipelines are working successfully, deployments are successful, and we also do monitoring after deployment. Yeah, and just know that anytime we have peak seasons or peak hours and the system is off, it would be I or Steve that they reach out to. So I'm very glad to be part of the Kampala DevOps community, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be among the panelists. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Susan, for that introduction. On to you, Eric.
Oh, sorry, David?
Eric,
okay.
Oh, thanks, Diana. My name is Eric Kasakya. Happy to be here, and thanks for the opportunity to the team, Diane and Stephen and all the other organizers behind this event. I work with Standard Bank Group, Securities, which is an entity in Uganda that deals with helping clients who wants to trade in stocks, either to sell or to buy stocks. That is the entity under Stanbic Uganda Holdings. We also do manage, I believe, the second biggest portfolio under Unit Trust, which is Stanbic Unit Trust, with about 4 funds. So in that team, as a technology team that supports the investment arm of the business, we provide solutions and support on those solutions that are used by the investment team, the traders, and the operations team to manage the investment for the different clients that are currently invested with us. And as a technology unit, of course, those solutions ideally are to enable and support the growth and the scaling of the solutions within the franchise, but also within the country. Thank you.
Okay, on to you, David.
Thank you, Diana. So my name is David Okwii. I'm the lead developer at Sub Digital, which is a software company based here in Uganda. I lead development on a portfolio of enterprise products. So that is spanning document management systems to visitor management systems, to regulatory tech that is outsourced to us from government. So on a day-to-day, I work across the full stack from back-end architecture and access control down to how we deploy these systems reliably to our clients. Yes, and I also work with a team of developers that are in charge of reliably developing software and deploying it across our fleet of servers and infrastructure to ensure that we have reliable uptime. So it's been great. Before I joined, I actually built a SaaS product called SiteMonkey. Chanda could be knowing about it. It was an uptime monitoring tool, actually, that enabled users to monitor their website and also add things like heartbeats monitoring, cron job monitoring, and so forth. So I have an experience back then in Linux system administration and full-stack software development. So it's been a great journey, and I'm glad to be here to share my experiences so far.
Wow, that's great to hear from all of you. I think combined there are more than a decade of experience. So picking up from that, David, having transitioned from software engineering into DevOps, have you applied core software development practices in DevOps? And how has that coding background shaped the way you build trust and drive a DevOps culture across?
Thank you for that question. Actually, it's very helpful being a developer before you join DevOps, because then you understand the development workflows. You understand things like pipelines, unit testing, CI/CD pipelines, and also working with developers in general. And you understand how important monitoring errors and bugs in production really is. You understand that deployment could easily go wrong. So you know you don't want to deploy on things like on a Friday, for example, because you know that is not a very smart idea whatsoever, right? And because it is standard, things go wrong in production. So you're very calculative of when you actually deploy, make a deployment to production. These are systems that are run by human beings and they are prone to errors. So the risk assessment there is very, very helpful. And also with a background in software, you can now, easily turn infrastructure into code actually coming from software. So now you can easily automate repetitive tasks by simply defining them in a code format and committing them in Git. And so it's a lot easier to do. And also there is this culture where you merge ops and development, right? So traditionally you would have a bridge, not a bridge, but a wall between the developers and the ops or the system admin people. And so when something fails, there is always blame that is going to be shifted across either the ops people or the devs. And at the end of the day, it's really the client that suffers. So merging these two traditionally distinct roles into one and ensuring that you coordinate and orchestrate them properly for proper deployment of software is a culture and a skill that is extremely helpful in how successful these systems can be deployed and reliably run in production. So that is what I have to say in brief for that.
Thank you very much for that, David. Susan, I'll let you pick it up from there.
My journey has been quite a dramatic one, but quite interesting. But I have a background also in electrical engineering, being that it's the first thing I opted to do. But my path into DevOps also started way back also with the software engineering side of things, where I got the technical foundation through a bootcamp I did attend called the Kirachicks, and a lot of mentorship that I got throughout the program, a lot of people who took me through how good software engineering can be. And that basically was the ground that I still lean on even up to today while I work at Emata. And honestly speaking, the DevOps, the first word is dev. So essentially, you just really need to understand the developer side of things. Like you can't reliably streamline what you do not understand. They will give you work to deploy and you don't really understand what is going on. Yeah. So these practices, I've always carried them around all the time. Understanding version control. I think David talked about CI/CD, things that we always interface with on a day-to-day. But a good example, while we work at Emata, we have a front-facing application that we have that many of our partners do interface with. And while supporting these partners, I directly have to kind of use the system. So think of a scenario where you're supporting a partner and you don't really understand what is happening in a system. So you don't know where to support and how to support. So I think Emata has been like a backbone with all the work that we do currently. It has helped me to even advance more because I understand that days where you would want to, we always call it getting your hands dirty. There are days where you will not want to get your hands dirty, but if you push to that extent, it really helps you and aids you to make sure that you really know what you're doing. And at the end goal is every time, like for example, a DevOps engineer is the one building, I wouldn't say like really building the entire application, but kind of contributing to what is going into production. There's a bit of trust of, okay, I know how things might be going to run in the production environment. And there at least there's that kind of, it sits well that at least I will know how things might run in production. They might turn out this way if we go this route, or they might turn out the other way. So I would say it is something that I've carried along and I can't just put it aside. And it will always be something that I always do. Yeah, I would leave it at that then.
All right, thank you so much, Susan, for that. We have got a little bit of a background onto software engineering. So with Eric, I want to kind of step it a little notch higher. So for many teams in East Africa, migrating or scaling on cloud infrastructure isn't just a technical decision. It's a financial decision and operational balance. So what is one major architectural shift or cost optimization lesson your team has learned while scaling in the local market? Being that you also work in the financial sector. So.
Thanks, Diana and Susan and David. I think they did touch on some of the core software engineering principles, which really cut across all. You cannot do it without them in the cloud engineering space. And to your question, one, we work for either you may be working for a financial institution or whatever business you're working for, you work for a profit-making company. So at the end of the day, they need for profit. So cost is a big player. And in some entities, there is budget that is given to take or given to the systems. And if you run out your budget, of course, the CEO may not necessarily know what Kubernetes is, what is Docker, what's a pipeline. All he's going to be looking at is a balance sheet and to see where is the biggest cost coming from. And if it's coming from tech and they dig down in tech and it's not people's salary, it is a cloud cost, then you will be a problem. I remember one time I had a chance to review a cloud environment where the engineer that set it up that they developing a product was going to production, but as of that time, they were not yet in live. And they were paying way above $10,000, which is about over 35 million per month. But yet you are still in UAT or you are in dev. And in your question, you say, what is that one thing? And I would say not every product should be deployed on Kubernetes. I believe sometimes there's a saying that says, don't use a gun to kill a mosquito. In our engineering space, we have quite a number of tools, and you have to assess the solution, the traffic it will have, and the budget the company has, and provide the solution. Let us not provide fancy tech tools to even a product which only has 5 customers as of that moment. So understanding that not every solution ideally it should be applied on a particular problem is a very an important lesson for us in tech. I'll give you an example that there are container orchestration tools which might be cheaper, but also may not require a lot of domain or technical knowledge to set them up or deploy them up. I'll give you an example, a tool like ECS in AWS. Most likely will serve most of the applications some people have until they reach a good traffic to acquire a mature technology like a Kubernetes. The other things will be, I did see when people were doing in some of the environments where the choices of tools you use on the dev environment regarding, versus the ones you use in production or in UAT would eventually bring down the costs that people are having. You may not need, even if you're deploying on a Kubernetes cluster in production, you may not need to use it in dev. Most likely you have to use it in UAT. But that also then goes back to the skills as other people, David and Susan had hinted on, is if you want to run in cloud efficiently, you must use software engineering and other things like make sure the code infrastructures, code principles are applied. Running a UAT environment 24/7 when you did test only once a year may not add value to the company, yet you will be having costs. It will speed the time to delivery if you have those skills and ensuring that you run to the market faster. So those are some of the areas where finance had to be considered in regards to the choice of technology, and rightly so is because we actually work for finance, for a profit-making organization. So they are not necessarily the testing environment for us to learn the technologies only. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Eric, for that. I think one thing I've picked from that is don't bring a gun to a sword fight. So on to you, Eric. Which one cost optimization lesson have you learned? David?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much, Diana, on that. So we have local clouds in Kampala here, which is great. But we also have offshore cloud, running in Europe, in the Americas, in Asia, and so forth. And the fact is, local cloud is more expensive than foreign offshore cloud. That's for a fact. Sometimes 3 times as expensive as what you actually have offshore. So running a server on, say, on a Linode cloud or AWS on Amazon, for example, could be, let's say, $12, $24, let's say $12, right? Running the same server with the same specs in a cloud environment here in Kampala is going to cost somewhere even $100. That's a crazy cost, right? So that was a shocker to me, but I'm not entirely surprised actually, because when you look at the scale at which the offshore cloud is operating at, they have economies of scale. They have huge data centers, which means they have cheaper power. They have, cooling systems, water, and all these. Because of the scale they're operating at, the costs naturally come down. bring it down to a cloud provider here in Kampala who is running on Umeme or UEDCL, and they have to build redundancy, cooling, and so forth. With the costs here, the cost of operations are incredibly high. That is understandable. However, if you have your application hosted here in Kampala, you benefit a lot from latency. The application is way faster, actually. You're looking at probably, latency of like 5 to 15 milliseconds. Whereas if you have the same thing in Europe, you're looking at maybe 150 or at best milliseconds, right? So the application here is way, way faster to run than when it is hosted offshore. So for critical applications like financial services, payment systems, and all that, I would absolutely run them here because the cost benefit in terms of user experience to the end user, I think offsets the cost of running it offshore. Two is where you have things like data compliancy, for applications, especially in finance and medical, where it is a requirement for personal data to be hosted in the country. That is a no-brainer. You have the option. You definitely want to have your infrastructure hosted here, right? But for non-critical applications, backups, or maybe a website, things that are not in real time, you absolutely can benefit from hosting the data offshore for sure. So those are my 2 cents on that. I'm glad to hear what others have to say.
Okay, Susan, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, maybe something small. I think the previous speakers touched it all. But to the question you asked, Stephen, what lesson the team has learned when trying to scale into a local market. In our case, I will give a scenario. Last year sometime, we were also at a certain stage like this. And I think my biggest lesson from this was when you're scaling into a new market, you should avoid like vendor lock-in, like kind of identifying what tool exactly you're going to be using, what kind of stack you're going to do, what cloud you'll be using, because it's like a trap. And now you can imagine once you have your system and you're ready to move to this local market or you're scaling into it and you're already locked in a vendor that this is what I want to use, and you reach and you hear the constraints that would be there in this case, like the data, which is always like the most thing that will constrain you, that we need the data in country, and maybe your system is not compatible to that. So for us, it was kind of, we hit a snag there at first, but we had to shift around and flip the order. We needed to understand the requirements of what the region needs. You understand, and then you build for it, and then from that you ensure that you're abiding to like your system is compatible with the different data protection rules or any other things that would be in that country, or whether where you want to venture into the market. And the best takeaway that I got from that is when you're building, you build for versatility from day one, so that your thing can be easy to ship into the local market seamlessly without having to interface with different challenges that it would come with. Yeah, I would say that.
Thank you very much, Susan, for that. I think that about says it. I will not add anything on that. So the next question is, AI and LLMs are rapidly reshaping software delivery from co-pilot assisted code, automated incident triage, where you're seeing real productivity gains with AI in your workflows, in your DevOps workflows today. Where is the hype exceeding reality? Eric, let's start with you.
Where is the hype exceeding reality?
Yeah, manage gains.
Well, there is value already on the table brought by these tools within our day-to-day work in terms of productivity. A lot of areas where which would have taken longer. For example, sometimes you could be looking at a log that you are not very familiar with, and you may not easily grasp of what is causing this particular issue. It is very easy for an LLM or one of those tools which are popular being utilized to identify what's causing the error and be able to even find a solution to that particular problem. But as any solution which comes with that kind of potential, there is of course a tendency in terms of us over-assuming the readiness of our environment to deploy those solutions. One of the areas I think which we are not yet maybe ready for is because these tools actually utilize your maturity in the data. And it's one of the areas that where we were not yet mature as maybe a region or a country. And so it limits the accuracy, but also what we can do with the tool as of now. So we have a lot of expectation. Many people are thinking about an agent company, almost everything being done by an agent. But when you look at the kind of the data points which would have been used to train these particular machines to answer and do our problems, they're not available. Some problems which can easily be solved by these particular tools, you would require the data to be readily available. But some of our areas, especially maybe in finance also, is you find there's no data. And so some of those information has largely remained in people's heads, and there was not much of the documentation to happen. So I highly suspect that, yes, there is potential in these tools, but we have a limitation on the data, which is going not to make us realize the benefit early enough, in as much as it's not a limitation on the technology, it's an environment that has found us in, which we may have the constraint to. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Eric. David, would you like to pick it up from there?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to just run off from where Eric has actually ended. Absolutely everything that is talked about. There is a hype around, this fallacy that, you can create an agentic workflow where everything is absolutely automated. You just go to the gym, come back, sleep properly. The agents are just doing everything, can even go on vacation to the beach and have fun, and the agents are doing everything. Absolutely not true. That is too much hype, as Eric would has said. That will give you a lot of headache actually on the reverse, right? Because at the end of the day, you are the person who is in charge and is responsible. And should anything go wrong, they're not going to call OpenAI agents or whoever it is, are going to call you, who is going to be responsible for the incident, for example, right? But also on top of that, I'll answer A later on productivity. But also on top of that, I think for me, the biggest issue is the cost. It is extremely expensive. If you've used any AI tooling system, actually companies in Kampala they don't have a budget. The tokens are very expensive, they're outpacing actually budgets on other important things. You get, so it's extremely expensive, and even if you went with a base package, it will you'll run out of your tokens, or you run out of your usage limit very, very fast. So I think for us, that's just not working out for now. The other part is related to this agentic fallacy. The humans have to be in charge, and they need your judgment. Like what we discussed earlier about the architecture, of servers in Kampala versus servers in the Americas or in Europe. That is a human judgment. I know that here the infrastructure is probably more expensive, but latency is faster. We also have local billing in UGX versus USD. Like that is context that AI could possibly not have. And so that is where your judgment comes in. Even in just architectural design of your infrastructure itself, most of it is going to run around policies, it's going to run around things that an AI is not going to know about. But on a productivity side of things, it's been extremely an incredible journey. I can tell you that. Like Eric talked about, that those logs. I mean, you have this huge log. Imagine have 1,000 log line, at 2 a.m. to look at. Imagine that, looking at those tiny text, timestamps and abstract log details and all that. As in, that's too much hair pulling going on, right? So when you get that and probably throw it at an AI, it has better processing capacity than any human being to ingest that much data, text or log, and give you a fair interpretation that then you can action on and actually do something about it, right? Everybody, I think, universally agrees on that one for sure. I don't have fun looking at log files, and this is where AI has absolutely helped me a lot. Other things like documentation, writing documentation, run books. Oh, how did you do this? Onboarding a new engineer is probably not familiar with Linux or whatever it is. Let the AI just write the documentation, the run books, the commands that I wrote, to bring up the whole system and all that, so that they can do it themselves instead of that knowledge remaining with me. Put it in the documentation, let somebody else do it. Boilerplates, writing Docker files, CI/CD pipelines, yada, 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 config files, all that stuff. Some of it, I've done it, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. I can't be doing the same thing over and over again every other time. So let the AI do that stuff, right? It's based on my experience already. So most of that, plumbing is now offset to AI, and that is where I see incredible productivity gains so far in that area. So I'll stop here.
Okay, so apparently you cannot go on vacation and leave AI to do for you everything. So Susan, what are you going to leave the AI to do for you?
Well, from what the speakers have said, the productivity is actually really there, but I
I think
We have lost her.
Yeah, we might
think
have lost.
what
Yeah.
is oh, am I back? Yeah, sorry
Yes,
about that.
yes, yeah.
So what people tend to miss is with these AI models or agents, all the different skills, it comes down to what context you're really putting in. If you really give it a lot of context, it tends to hallucinate. I think most of us have encountered this. And with DevOps, there are some things that you can't let AI really do because you don't know how things will turn out to be when you're going to production. And if we're talking things like Kubernetes, it would be really a nightmare. And I think for me, the non-negotiable thing with it is security. Is the moment you're giving it quite a lot and it gets access to kind of your secrets, keys. That's where the pain point could come in, that you really have to be very careful and you ensure that you're not really giving it really too much. But where the hype is exceeding reality is like what they mentioned. You can't just hand AI the keys and let it do your operations work unsupervised. I think we are not there yet currently. Maybe as they plan to develop more models, maybe we will get there, but we are not yet there. So I think we really need to, the human second eye has to be there. And for me there, it's where I would put it at, like someone needs to be there and supervise what it's doing, read through the different, like as it's working and trying to do the work that you've told it to do, just look through to ensure that things are as you expect them to be. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that, Susan. So now we go to upskilling. DevOps is as much about culture as it's about tooling. How can engineering teams in Kampala cultivate strong DevOps culture and upskill teams when dedicated DevOps roles are still emerging? emerging? I'll begin with David.
Yes, that's a very good question. And in our local context here, actually, we are a market where one person puts on like a gazillion hats. I don't know about Eric. Maybe he's in a big company, you know. But where I am, DevOps is really, you're a DevOps guy, you're the front end guy, you're the back end guy, you're the DB guy, you're the, oh my God, network guy, you're the IT guy. It's so much going on, right? So when you talk about upskilling, it's both an opportunity and a challenge at the same time, at least where I'm coming from, right? And so right now I'm not in that position anymore. Of course, we are slightly a much more diverse team, but initially it was like that. So while we have separate roles, we have maybe a front-end guy, a back-end developer, and some computer science person, I tend to encourage a fusion of roles, right? So for example, the back-end guy is usually working with me. We can't afford to have a dedicated specific role, maybe only DevOps and it's only DevOps. It's not happening. We can't have only backend and it's only backend. It can't happen. So what I tend to do is to have to pair people. So a backend and a DevOps guy and a DevOps guy and a backend guy, so that they're able to do these roles a little bit of simultaneously. Should we have a DevOps person doing a little bit of more DevOps work, then they can do that. But more generally, I tend to push for ownership, right? So if you push, if you're in charge of a certain repo or a product, whatever, you should be able to own the entire flow from development to release to actually production, so that should it break, it is not somebody else's responsibility because they don't have context to what is happening. It's actually you who is responsible, and you're able to respond to an incident should we have something go offline. But also, we also have a shared dashboard of what is actually currently operating. So if somebody is not available, or if they've gone on leave or whatever, and something goes off in production, then everybody else is aware, at least somebody can respond to that incident. So that is key. So while we have ownership, we also have shared responsibility, at least where visibility is concerned. And then more importantly, when it comes to post-mortem, we don't play the blame game, we actually try to get to the root cause, learn whatever we need to learn from an incident, and ensure that next time it doesn't happen. We don't grind anybody, we don't punish them, we don't fire them. We learn whatever we need to learn, so that next time we actually have a better way of responding to it. So I think that is what I have to say on that one for now.
And more like the shared responsibility model. So Eric, how many hats are you wearing?
Interesting. Well, maybe now I largely do two. Well, I give leadership to the team, but that provide the technical services to the investment side of our business. Then, well, I also do cloud engineering or DevOps work. So I think I'll give general, but maybe I will speak to maybe our environment. Well, we are a financial institution. That's one. Two is quite an old company in terms of structure and existence. So there are quite a number of things which are already in place, which may not be in other starting businesses. And three is, well, they have the financial power to have those different teams in the different roles. But as a culture in tech, even when you're working such an entity, you need to be very, very, very careful to not only know just a tiny thing on the whole process, because different things change. And if you're not familiar with other processes, you may not. I'll give you an example. I think back to the first question which you asked, is that the software engineering skills, how have they helped you in the cloud environment? Well, I think, joined a team that was struggling with deployment of a solution. So I'm told they had taken about 6 months to deploy a particular solution, whatever they were deploying. And it was largely that the team that was responsible to deploy had never dealt with development. So, and the team that was in development had never dealt with deployment. Now, you have a cloud engineer, a DevOps engineer deploying a solution he does not understand, or he has never coded in the language of that thing. So if any error happens, he will just push back and say there's an issue with the application. It may be an issue he can actually solve by himself if he actually had an exposure with the programming environment. Now, the ability to be able to tell that this error is on the database, or this error is in the migration file, and it is an error just as simple as the version number of that migration. If you're a DevOps engineer and you have that exposure and that experience, you can quickly call the engineer and say, please change the version number of this file and push, and the deployment will be done. Than to just call the developer and they say, your application is failing, and they have nowhere to start from. Now, for you to have that exposure is, we have a model in our organization, and it's not even, I think, in our organization, I think it's well known, that learning is ideally 70% hands-on, 20% you learn it from your peers and association, and 10% is the one which is from the structural classes and lectures. So as an engineer, and even the DevOps community, the tools are many. You must get your hands dirty in experimentation. And that's why, normal spaces have been, I advocate for dev environment, just people to try out tools. Sometimes I challenge some people, or sometimes you can be working with a vendor and you tell them the problem you are telling me now was solved years back. Why are you still facing the same problem? Yet we have tools which can remove that problem. But the problem they're having that is maybe they have never experimented with other tools to remove that problem within their development life cycle. So for us to keep up with the pace, we must experiment those tools. They tell you about Kubernetes. You may not necessarily need to go and do certified Kubernetes administrator or certified or developer, but test out the tool. Write a YAML file, deploy a container, deploy a pod, test and see if it works. That is learning. The other is attend these sessions and ensure that knowledge is shared. Someone to tell you that this direction you will not succeed if you go that path may have saved you a lot of time for you to wake up in the middle of the night when the production environment has gone down and you pay the school fees for that particular session. And where you can, for those with budgets, some of us may be working in organizations where they give a budget for certifications. Take them, at least one, or if you have that budget and you have the time, please do spare the time and do take that certification. But remember, that is 70%. I mean, that is just 10%. The 70% comes from the hands-on. The other 20 is already from the mentorship. So if you are doing all the other two, that's already 80%, I mean 90% of what is required for you to keep up with the changes in our ecosystem and to ensure that you remain relevant, but also adding value to the institution where you are currently working. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Eric. On top of that, we usually have sessions, and most of our sessions deal with open source tools, so you can be able to practice whatever you've learned. On to you, Susan.
Yeah, what they said is actually the pure truth, or the gospel truth, if we put it out like that. But I would just touch on to the culture point. Like they said, the DevOps roles are just still emerging with Kampala. Maybe with the different countries, things have really changed that side, where you find companies have like a dedicated engineer, and for the ones here in Kampala that can afford like a dedicated DevOps engineer. But like Eric said, growth, it all starts from growth. Try as much as possible to keep learning. When you have the opportunity to do certifications, do them. And I think also companies, I will just throw it back to companies, if you can really allocate time, however much of time you would be busy during maybe a sprint or whatever time you're doing, dedicate some time in the sprint for someone to learn. And I think for us, it has really helped when you're doing a task that you're not really so sure of, you're given some time off that is really ballparked. You say, I just need like maybe 5 hours to build capacity around such and such. And then it helps save you time where you just go meander around a task and find yourself going back and forth, when it's essentially you should have started with building like capacity over something small and finish it, and you're able to ace it. Yeah, and also how you get to retain people, because aside from the money perspective, where someone would want to stay in a company because either they are being added salary or they're getting really good money, people tend to like to stay where they are really growing. If someone is learning on job what they're doing, they will tend to stay there, and I think it will benefit both parties, the company and also the person, in this case, the engineer. So I would just say it's all around growth for me. Yeah.
Okay, so let's do with data compliance. I know you have touched a little bit about it. Maybe you can just add a few points from this. How do local data protection and data sovereignty laws, such as Uganda's Data Protection Act, affect your deployment strategies and choice of cloud region?
I proceed with that.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think that's the real constraint for most of the companies. It's always how do I handle data? And most of us are dealing with sensitive data. If you're into financial, if you're working for a fintech, you're dealing with people's personal data that you don't really want to mess up with, because they could be like there would be things that you could face if you're doing it wrongly. So in place, I think, is how you get to work around the laws that are there, build your systems. So that's, like I mentioned, something around vendor lock-in. Make sure that your system, as you're building it, is you have to ensure that it's really compliant and it's easy to maybe move to any other country without having to engineer around the whole system and redoing everything. So it all starts from the architecture. Try as much as possible to put things together that they really make sense when it comes to moving into another country, whereby you don't have to sit down again and re-engineer the whole system. So for me, it starts down from how you architecture the system that you're working on, and ensure that when you're scaling into another country, it's easy to plug into the other country's market without having to face challenges. Yeah.
Okay, Eric, over to you.
Well, thanks. And maybe just to add on what Susan has shared, given the nature of the industry we are, especially some of us maybe will be working in, the regulations are tight, and it's not even left as a decision of the company, but there are regulators who keep on doing audits and confirming where is this data seated. You can't do it. You can't do this particular thing from here. And I will give you an example. There is a particular service I remember. I think we wanted to use, and the provider, let's say AWS, did not have that service in a region which complies with data policies of Uganda. So it can also be a big blocker in terms, if your company is very key on compliance, there are certain things you may not be able to do, even if it's a hype, because they are not yet in the region where you can test them up or even move in production. You may have a future which is currently, let's say, in the island region. No, it's only possible in the US region on the AWS, and you don't have it in an African region, let's say. And let's assume that all the other countries where it is, they are not compatible with the regulations within your country, and you may not be able to test out that particular thing, capability, or even use it. So as engineers, we should not bypass, and I want to stress that point, because, well, in as much as they're exciting to do them and we want to do them, it's more to move with the regulator and give them the comfort of what is possible, what risks are possible and what's not possible. But where the regulation has not yet permitted is to remain in the compliant position because it costs a lot of money to maintain, let's say, the license of your company than to just experiment out with the capability and not yet sure of the value to return on the table. So compliance is key in choosing where you are going to host the data, the regions, what you can do in the pipelines, which method of secret storage you are going to use. All those are in play because compliance is key and because trust is very important to the customers, even to the regulator. You need to ensure that you are compliant with what the regulations are saying and not to move ahead or do it in breach, but you're acquainted with what the regulations are requiring us to do. So they affect what you choose in terms of the region where you're going to host the data, the technology you are going to use, because if it's not yet in the region which is compliant, you can't use it. But also in terms of the requirement, if they require you to be in country or have a local presence in terms of data, you can't. I think some of us saw one of which was announced, maybe I can talk about that one, is that I think Equity Bank did move its data center into Uganda as a requirement by regulation to ensure that they have the data fitted within the country. So those are decisions. You may want to be anywhere else, but if the regulator says that, you have to move the data into the country. Thank you.
Okay, David, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Very little. I would only say that because of this, you have to know the client, the regulatory requirements, and in most cases, you're going to end up with a hybrid cloud anyways, where you want to move data on different regions based on the compliance requirements around that data, right? Yeah, so it's briefly that.
Looking ahead 2 to 3 years, what technology infrastructure will have the biggest impact on how tech startups and enterprises in East Africa build and deploy software? David, let's begin with.
That's a hard one, predicting the future. But where things are going, definitely AI is a big deal, and for better or for worse, it is here, and the tools are going to be advancing more and more. I think observability, is going to become slightly more advanced. So actually, most of the toolings actually were more prominent in the development, writing code, less in infrastructure and DevOps. But now I'm beginning to see more integration coming into the DevOps area. I see Grafana, for example, has an AI assistant. So when I look at my Grafana dashboards, I can ask an AI assistant, or what's the CPU on this server? Can you create for me a dashboard that shows memory on this server? Can you explain this metric that I don't understand? And all that, right? So there is a bit of integration now coming into the DevOps area from the code area, from the code space, which is a very incredible thing to do. Then, of course, because of that, security is going to become a very big deal. A lot of people are vibe coding for they're just doing whatever they want to do, and there's AI is leaving a lot of security loopholes in there. So there has to be somebody who is going to do a cleanup, right? And security is going to become a very big deal, right? Because you have a lot of people doing what they have no idea what they're doing, but their things are working. They just don't know how it is working. Now, if you don't know how it is working and the securities and all that, it can be a very dangerous place to be. And very soon you're going to be hearing a lot of vulnerabilities coming out, right? Because of people who have deployed incredible systems that absolutely work, but didn't do a security audit, or it didn't pass an expert eye in that area. So yeah, let's look at DevSecOps going forward in the coming years, right? Yes. Other than that, I think it's going to be incredible. It's going to be. I'm very optimistic about, especially the toolings around observability. It's going to make our lives way better. But the human is going to be extremely important in the loop, especially in DevOps. Somebody needs to be blamed. Somebody needs to be held accountable, and it's never going to be the AI. When the CEO calls, he's not going to call OpenAI or Cloud, is going to call you. And whatever you used to deploy that code or maintain that system, you are going to be able to answer that. The good news is it's just lessened some of the laborious work that we've been doing. So that's what I'm seeing into the future.
Okay, I think the next panelist who's going to take the time travel machine will be Susan.
Not sure that I can add more, but the talk on mouth of everyone is really AI is the next thing that everyone is predicting in what 2 to 3 years, how things will be looking like. And I think David hinted on observability. Currently, there are a bit of constraints to the models that are there and the agents designed around this to monitor, observe, see the logs, do some bit of tracing and see how things are faring on in production or any other environment. But I think it will also kind of loosen the constraint of the head count, because teams will be relieved of the time they need to take to do certain things. You'll find that even a small team can even, the pace will be there, however much they're very small. So I think AI is there to loosen a bit that constraint around how many people are in a company and how much can they do at a certain, like given a specific quarter. You'll find instead of taking a whole quarter building a feature, AI might do it in just like a few weeks, in a few sprints, and then you're done. So I think for me, seeing ahead, it would be AI and all the good things, more good things that it's going to come around it. Yeah, that would be it.
Rick, it's your time for time travel.
All right, thanks. And not to differ much, I think, from the previous panelist, I'll just give an addition ideally to the engineers who may be on this call in regards to areas of opportunity. I believe there are two areas, depending on the kind of environment you want to be in. If you are looking at large-scale companies, or give cases, guys who produce large amounts of data, telecoms and the like, banks, is they will have the budget to actually work on AI solutions and have them in production. Where the real game is going to be is someone who understands how the solution scales in production, someone who can actually bring down the budget or the cost which is involved in running that application in production, who is able to optimize and ensure that the cost is ideally realistic vis-a-vis the value of that product solution in production, and able to understand the solution of that environment. If you are an engineer targeting maybe medium-sized companies or those ones, it may not necessarily be on how to scale. They will require skills on how to build these capabilities. Someone who is able to build solutions around these large language models in a much cost-effective way, because they don't have that bigger budget. Yet many of them may be trying to start companies or startups with this kind of power. They will look for engineers who have this capability to build. Now, once that thing is built, they want to deploy it in the most cost-effective way. I'll give you an example. There are many companies today which still host their applications on a shared server because that's the budget they have. You may not find that same in a telecom because they have the finances to do it, but also the regulations cannot allow them to host on a similar kind of environment. Now, the other one who is starting, all it requires an engineer who understands how to use the most efficient and cost optimal tools to still deliver the solution. I know of the gentleman, I think is on Twitter, who has kept on posting a solution he has built on top of these large language models in the area of people who do research in school. And he keeps on saying that this solution is still deployed on his HP desktop, which is 4 GB of RAM, and it is making him over 3,000 or 10,000 per month in terms of revenue, US dollars. But he's still running them on a very optimistic compute resource. We just need an engineer who understands how this solution can. So if you only know how to use that only on AWS, of course you may not be the engineer is targeting. So having that knowledge on how can I deploy or develop the solutions of on large language models and deploy them and they work and they're not that expensive will be a skill required for all of us. Now, for those who have now high traffic, then how do we scale this capability to every other application of the majority of the users without breaking the bank? It will also be one of the areas to look out for. And as a focus is sometimes we tend to move slightly behind, given maybe the demand of these skill sets within our country or within our region. But we are the engineers to provide this capability to our country and to support its growth and not to be behind from the rest of the world. But it is our responsibility as the engineers of today to ensure that these capabilities are not only talked about on videos from European market, but we have those experiences within our country. I'll be glad to hear one of the breaking solution within our country, making it on the headlines and has been developed and maintained by Ugandan engineer. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Eric, for that. I don't see any questions in the chat, so I think we shall be wrapping up with closing remarks. So let's begin with Susan.
Well, I want to thank KDC for this opportunity to speak on a panel alongside other great men. I think my key takeaway from this is, I think one of the previous speakers from the before sessions did mention that we should not stop at Hello World. I know there could be quite a number of students on call, and way back we were just like you while starting out. I think don't get tired of learning and also implementing what you learn, because the kind of world you're venturing into or you're already into is not as like it doesn't rely on theory. Those things do not work here. Like things are really changing all the time. Back then people were not really focused on 2AI and things have taken a turn. People are thinking about ML ops then. Now we are talking about AI models. Like things are really changing really fast. So one thing you really need to do to stay in the game is make sure you learn as much as you can, because we're in a competitive environment. People are out there learning, so don't get tired of learning. Where you're stuck, make sure you try to take on different mentorship lessons with different people, and also how you package yourself on on LinkedIn, for example, also matters, because that's how you get noticed by different people. Reach out to people. Don't be shy to hit someone's DM and ask them a few questions. So for me, those would be my key takeaways from this session and the whole summit at large. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Susan, for that. Don't be shy, hit up someone's DM. Next is you, Eric, your closing remarks.
One, I'll want to send my appreciation to the organizers of this event for bringing it up together and having the great choice and the session prepared for the engineers within our country and even those across. Much appreciation to you all, and thank you for putting this together. And to those that have attended, let's take the learnings from here and not just remain at the theory or just I think it was a great session. Pick something and go and practice out. It is what will remain ideally with you. It's what we have tested and proven. For those starting up in the journey, learn as much as you can, as Susan has said. And since this is a technical field, most of the proprietary tools, they have the open source similar version. Try them out. Because you can speak confidently from a tool you have tested than the one you have never tested. So once you're in interviews, it will be more of what have you done with these tools, just a demo, an example. It's much easier to get to buy the confidence of those you're interviewing with or the role you're interviewing for, and they will be more comfortable to give someone a role which they have demonstrated that they have actually tested something. So stay on the course. Let's build our country. Let's build the region. It is our responsibility. Nobody's coming to do that for us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eric. David? You're muted.
Yes. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to be part of this great conversation. For me, I would say DevOps is one of the fields that has actually increased in hiring, surprisingly. Okay, not surprisingly, because I know somebody has to run the servers, somebody has to monitor things, right? AI agent runs on something. It runs on a computer, it runs on the cloud, it needs power, that is DevOps, literally, or site reliability engineering. You get? So actually, this is a very interesting field that is growing in prominence and relevance day by day. Why? Because still a human being is required to ensure uptime of those systems regardless. So it is a very exciting field to venture into, better when you come through software development, as we mentioned earlier. But it's incredibly exciting and it's incredibly relevant, even in the AI, or most especially in the AI age. So I would really advise a lot of people on the call to stay on the course. Learn the basics, very important. Those things of learning networks, things of learning the operating system, the kernel, how it works. Before you jump into Kubernetes, really, do you even know how to do an IF config, just finding an IP address of the different interfaces. So before you get into these high-level abstractions of Ansible, of Chef, of Kubernetes, of Docker, and whatever it is, all those are really lying on an underlying infrastructure or concept. So learn the basics, the fundamentals, the first principles. Don't jump ship. And then on top of that, you will then start learning all these abstractions and all these high-level tools that are built onto the fundamentals. That's extremely important. Be agile, be a student of lifelong learning, take ownership, don't quickly blame anybody else, take ownership of the systems that you develop and deploy. And you have a very interesting career going forward. So otherwise, thank you for inviting me. It's been great, and I'm looking forward to the next session.
All right. Thank you very much to all our panelists, David, Susan, and Eric. Thank you so much for the advice and for all the points you have given us and sharing your experience. We do appreciate you honoring our invite and making this session very insightful. Thank you very much.
Sure.